So let's go to verse 9. And let me just read to you verse 9. Revelation 1:9. I, John, both your brother and companion in the tribulation. Wow. That's an interesting word. Thlipsis is the Greek word, the tribulation. Actually, it kind of means to be squashed. It's kind of like being in a trash compactor. You ever been, behind Best Buy or, some big box store, and they have one of those giant things that they throw all the boxes in that comes out a little cube? Those boxes are going through tribulation. They're being squashed from every side. And that's what John said in his life. Verse 9, I am your brother, I'm a Christian, I'm your companion. That means together we're going through all these troubles and the kingdom and the patience of Jesus Christ. And I was on the island called Patmos. Why are you on the island called Patmos, John? For the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. Did you know if John hadn't been connected to the Bible and if he hadn't kept talking about Jesus, he wouldn't have been on Patmos? Last year, in October, I spoke at a conference on Patmos for a whole week. It was unbelievable. I've been on Patmos for one day or a half a day, taking groups around on cruise boats, but I've never lived there. And I lived there a whole week. What an awful place to live. The wind blows all the time. I mean, the prevailing wind out there in that part of the Aegean is constant, and it's cold. And everywhere else we were on this, when I was speaking in Greece and in Italy, it was warm. It was beautiful. Patmos was cold, damp, wind blowing. And I actually taught a class and took the class on field trips. And we went to one of the caves where John may have been. And even in the cave, it was cold with the wind blowing. But think about John. He was at the worst time of his life. He was alone. He was out of touch. Did you know they took his cell phone away when he became a prisoner? Did you all know that? Did you ever think about that? His cell phone of the day, his connection to people, they took away. That's what being in exile means. He was taken away from his church. Where did John pastor? Do you remember when you were studying Acts with whoever you studied Acts with? Yeah. Where was he? He was the pastor at Ephesus. You remember the church that Paul pastored and passed on to Timothy, his son in the faith, Ephesus? Do you remember who took it after that? The one who was taking care of Jesus' mother, Mary. John was entrusted with Mary at the cross. You remember that in John 19? And John moved to Ephesus to become the pastor of the largest church of the ancient world. And that's where John was serving and very visible. Eusebius, the father of church history from Caesarea, said that the church in the early generations numbered as many as 50,000 people. Probably all the churches we're going to learn about in Revelation 2 and 3 were planted out of Ephesus. Now, Paul followed up and helped start the church at Ephesus. It already was a nucleus of people. But Paul built it with his longest ministry for 3 years. But then he launched it to Timothy, and it really grew. And then John came. So John was out of touch with the church. He was alone. He was in weakness. I mean, did you know he was probably a teenager when he was with Christ, a teenager in AD 30. Now it's AD 90. So 60, maybe 63, 4, 5 years have gone by. So he's at least 75, 83 years old, at least. And you say, so what? Harry Balbeck was, 90 years. You know what I mean? We know old people. Yeah, but not back then. Did you know in the first century they did forensic studies of tombs in Israel? The University of Iowa's dental school sent over a team of forensic pathological archaeologists, and they went through all the ossuaries and they collected the bones. The government let them do this. And they brought them to the lab and they spread them out and they found all the jaw bones and they examined the teeth and how worn they were. And, you can tell a lot about people by their teeth. You know what they found out? The average person only lived to be in their late 50s. And they were a lot shorter than we are nowadays. They were diminutive, smaller, and their teeth were worn down because they ate coarse diets. which means a lot of grains. And they showed that the average person's, the median age for death, you know how we say that the average life expectancy in America is 76.2 for men and 78.4 for women? It was like 59. So that means that people were about 20 years less of life than we had. So for John back then to be in his 80s, it would be like being 100 and some to us. So what was he? He was weak. He was in an insecure situation. I mean, he was a prisoner of an army of pagans that didn't like him, that hunted him down, and he was unsure about the future. The Apostle John had endured the horrors of the destruction of Jerusalem, the massacre of 1 million fellow Jews, the systematic hunting down of his fellow apostles by the Roman Empire, the wickedness of Nero, the convulsions of the empire by 4 successive competing emperors, and now the very personal adversary of John becoming Emperor Domitian himself. The emperor that called himself God. Now, all of them were deified, but Domitian pushed it. Domitian wanted everybody to worship him. When we get to Smyrna, we're going to see it's fascinating, the little process they went through. They put up a little Domitian statue. They would make all the people walk by the statue, take a little pinch of incense. The citizens had to do this, take a pinch, put it in the flame. That's all you had to do. You didn't even have to do anything. Just by doing that, burning incense in front of a statue, you were saying he's a god by your actions. And all you had to do is do that once a year, and you were given a certificate, and you were legit and safe and secure. But the Christians wouldn't do that. And so John got sent to the island. So he was in the worst time of his life. Secondly, he was a prisoner of the empire. He had been hunted. Have you ever been hunted? I love to hunt deer. I've sat out in my blind getting there before, light, and it's so cold, and you want to be so quiet, and I've shivered out there and hunted and with my boys, and we always got, our annual buck, and my wife canned it, and we ate it as roast beef dinners. I've hunted a lot since I was a little boy. I've never been hunted. You know how insecure it would be to have your own brother hunted down and massacred? That's what John did. His brother James. That's Acts chapter 12. To have all of your closest ministry friends, the other apostles, hunted down and horrible. Have you ever read Fox's Book of Martyrs and how they killed all these apostles? I mean, pushed through with spears, shot with arrows. According to Eusebius, John was probably, they tried to kill him and boiled him in oil. I don't know what that means. I don't know how you could survive boiling in oil, but he was hunted and badly treated. All that to say, he was a prisoner of the empire, and it was the worst time of his life. He was on the island of Patmos off the coast of Turkey. It's Roman Asia. It's 10 miles long, 6 miles wide. He was exiled under Domitian, who served the Roman Empire from 81 to 96. And according to Eusebius, the following emperor, Nerva, who succeeded Domitian, let him go in 96. So that gives us kind of a little date in history. The exiling of Christians would have ended in 95 by Domitian. Somewhere between 81 and 95 is when John was here on Patmos. This is where Patmos is. Now, all of you, this is the Roman Empire all the way up to the Hadrian's Wall right there, bisecting the British Isles into Roman Britain and the pagan Scots up there, So that's the furthest extent, and then all the way down across northern Africa, all the way down into Egypt, all the way down into Mesopotamia, around the Black Sea. All of these areas were the Roman Empire. But look, there's Patmos. It's that little 10-mile-long, 6-mile-wide island right there. And that's where John was. And you know what's fascinating? Look at verse 9. I love this. I, John, was your brother and companion in tribulation. I was in the island of Patmos, In verse 10, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard a voice, and Jesus showed up. You know what I love about that? Jesus knew John's address. He was exiled. He was alone. He was cut off. Nobody knew quite where he was except one person. See, Jesus knows where we are. He knows what we're going through.